Now, dusters are super quick, and even dravers are quicker than humans when it comes to this stuff. So, effectively, if there were human characters and maybe like other kinds of player character races, we would be seeing that the dusters are actually recovering from the surprise faster than everybody else.
Yeah.
Looking at the numbers for other characters, they're running into the 2 rounds off, 3 rounds off on these rolls. You guys are rolling like 1d6. They'd be rolling like 2d12 and stuff like that. So with that said, the eggs crack open and reptilian creatures clamber out. They are big lizards, but they have a particular glittering feature to their scales. They are not ordinary big lizards.
How big is
They
we're
are
talking
actually
about?
about the size of a person, each of them. So these eggs, I mean,
Oh,
so that
Okay.
you had not noticed this nest because it had been partially covered over and partially covered by the skeleton itself.
Okay.
So when the egg cracks open, you're like, wow, this egg is cracked. And then you realize just how big these freaking things are and how buried they are. And maybe part of the rocks that you had thought were just part of the rocks, actually, you had been looking at the side of an egg and not realized it.
Nice.
So
How
Okay.
many?
there are two creatures clambering out, just like pulling themselves out right now. Um, and that is their current situation. Okay, so that's the first the round in question, um, and this is going to sound a little bit ridiculous, but given the circumstances, I am going to allow one more monster knowledge roll.
Okay.
It's a much different set of perceptions you're working with here.
02. Okay.
Basilisks.
Oh. So what would I know? What do I know about it? I mean,
They
it's
will look at you and turn you into stone.
I know that part. Okay, good. Then I guess I don't have a reaction for to yell something to
Not
my
yet.
friend until
Not
I.
yet. But you are, I mean,
Okay.
your surprise is, of course, partly horror now.
Yeah.
Right.
I can, it makes sense.
So, yeah, that's your, basically, this is the skeleton of a mommy basilisk, and these were its babies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
That was a pretty important monster
I
knowledge
would
roll. I
say
feel
so.
yeah,
better.
wow.
The rules are that if you are attacking a basilisk, so key that's very legalistically put in the rules. And I want to make sure everybody knows this.
Mhm.
If you're attacking a basilisk, there's no way to avert your eyes from the chance of its eyes, its gaze catching you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you're attacking it, so that means I get to roll to see whether you get turned to stone. It's my roll on my percent. If you're
Okay.
attacking it, if you're not attacking it, that does not apply. It's assumed that you don't have to look at it enough to be at risk.
Yeah.
So that's your right. That's your setup there. So then the fun part for um, so the nice part is that of course Ithasha has retreated from direct observation of the situation and is busy transforming into humanoid form, and so we get the treat of seeing a snake approximately, well, under 2 meters long, but which is still a pretty big snake. Um, basically coiling into the little snake pyramid and then basically standing up into human form, right? In the characteristic duster humanoid. Dusters, I mean, I know this is bonkers, but humanoid dusters are mammals. I know it
Oh,
makes no sense, but that's what they're like. Okay, I mean, this is apparently in fantasy role playing or fantasy pop culture. If you're a woman, you gotta have breasts. There seems to be no
It's the
exception.
small ones.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and so the and so that's as far as I can see.
Covered with tattoos,
Right? Yes, yeah, with the heart tattoo. Right?
but definitely
Absolutely.
naked.
Yes, and so they're hairless and graceful like dusters are, and then of course your clothes are around in the area or your weapons or whatever it is that your staff and stuff, right? You put them there to
Believe me, right now I'm not bothering with those.
right, good enough. So basically you have done this. I kind of like this that we never saw your character in human form until now. Until now, it's just been a snake, right? So cool, right? And so that has occurred. Now, let us, I believe, I don't recall. Helma, did I have you make an observation roll or not? I was talking about observation that whole time.
Um, I think I'm not sure.
Did you actually make that roll? We talked all about what it was, but I don't know if you actually rolled.
Um, Let me think. I did roll.
Okay, good enough.
I did roll, and I rolled badly.
Right. Okay. So with that said, you're busy, you're being occupied. So we are in the round in which the basilisks are freeing themselves from the eggs, and in which the two of you are sort of staring in stunned shock at this, with an extra level of shock on the part of Farith.
yeah.
Right. And then in the case of Ithasha, who's up there on the heights, transforming into human and not in direct visual contact with what's below. So far, so good. 2 weeks earlier.
Okay.
So we have Farith, who is in the river town of at least it's over 2,000 people who live here, and so
Okay.
there's ships, not all the time, but ships and barges do stop at the little harbor there. Um, Commerce occurs. People are always collecting and warehousing. The important things that come from here are exotic leather. Leather, ordinary leather here is considered really cool and interesting elsewhere. Whether it's coming from the native alligators or the interesting other wildlife of different kinds. Um, and there's also the very, very interesting herbs, cacti, spices, perhaps, that are grown here. Things
Hmm.
that aren't considered too exotic here, but are commercially viable elsewhere. If peyote does not grow in this particular region, then I'm not the game master. And so, um, yeah, I mean, clearly, I mean, people warehouse these things and they prepare them for trade. Um, and there's plenty of um, dwellings that have been built over the last 2 centuries. So this is in human terms, this is a well established community. Um,
Okay.
and so there are different districts and regions where people live. Um, there are ways and paths up the canyons into the highlands that people can walk, or ring wagons and things like that. I don't think that we are talking about roads with paving stones, not outside of the town, but there's certainly the town itself has plazas and other built areas. So all of that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense to me. The one of the establishments that is not centrally located, but everybody knows where it is, it's not too isolated, is a place with a lot of comfortable rooms. I suppose you would call them bedrooms because a bed or a couch is featured in many of the rooms. Um, and it is set up in such a way that access to those rooms is always monitored from a central location. So you can't go into those areas with the rooms inside this building or set of buildings, perhaps, without going through the central area. And
Hmm.
one of the people who is always has their attention on that central area and the exchange of goods and imperial coinage in that central area um, is a woman who has been there as long, certainly long, much longer than Farth has been alive, and longer than any living human. Every living human in this region knows her as an adult who has been living here the entire time. Is the woman Sisiva, who owns this establishment and
Okay.
is
That
considered.
sounds
Um,
dusterish.
oh yes, and she looks like a duster. She's almost as
Okay.
tall as a
Okay.
human, so tall for a duster, but otherwise looks much like a duster. But definitely wears human clothes and operates as it looks like a functioning human member of the society here, culturally speaking, um, and is extremely sure of herself. This is her place, and women um, and who knows who else provide intimate services
Hmm.
here. And she organizes that commerce, and she organizes um, the behavior of everybody who comes here. So she, however, is also one of the most knowledgeable people about the local area. You don't know this to by all detail, but she is, um, certainly. Um, she looks like an ordinarily aged adult, but she's at least a century old. Um, so there's never any trouble at Savisa's place. So this is the person I think that Farith would have been talking to in order to gain
Hmm.
some perspective on where he might travel to learn more about his heritage or duster groups that he might go and stay with for a while.
Yeah.
Um, so therefore, you're talking into Savisa outside of her ordinary business relations.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I will place it on the outside of her building. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I think it's more like a traditional Japanese setup whereby there is a building you go through, and then there's a property with little buildings and walls and stuff like that going
Yeah.
up the hills after that. Um, so with some ways to travel inside and some ways to travel outside, through that system
Yeah.
of property.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yes.
So
There is. I've seen. Yeah.
So, but you
No,
on
I've
the other
seen
hand,
places like that when I was visiting Morocco. So
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's very easy to visualize.
cool,
There is a central area,
yeah.
and
So
you
the
get
way I'm seeing it is that you are inside that complex, but you are outside in the open air,
Mhm.
probably at a nice little table that has been set up with drinkable coffee and it's a nice civilized kind of environment that you're sitting in. And
Mhm.
so she's speaking to we'll open the dialogue with her saying, so you are the son of this person and you are
Okay.
and so she's kind of not to every last little detail, but she's getting an idea of your personal lineage.